And hello, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Pardon the Disruption. And I'm your host today. I'm going to be your moderator. I'm going to be your slight instigator for our panel of professionals, our panel of shakers. It is the #1 debate show on the internet, especially in the real estate space. But you're getting free game each and every week about just business in general. So it is my pleasure to go ahead and introduce from virtual left to right our panel today. Let's go ahead.
Looking forward to this show.
There we go. All right. To his right, we have
recently been crowned here on social media. It was not my reveal, the mob. I'm going to actually
call in some favors and maybe win you a couple rounds today. So missed you last week, but we're happy to have you back. Everybody needs to know a guy, you know? To his virtual right, RJ Bates. How you doing today, man?
Doing fantastic. RJ Bates III, the king closer. Excited to be here. Also excited to see Steve answer every question with he would hire a coach. I'm just curious, why has Steve not ever hired a coach on how to be a good podcast host? Still waiting on that.
Steve, is he digging at me now?
No, he's talking about me. I think he's talking about me. And one of these days, once we finally get a sponsor on this show, Chris is getting sponsored by Coke. Once we get an actual sponsor for this show, then I will hire a coach to be a better podcast host. Thank you for the suggestion, RJ.
And finally, last but certainly not least, he's the heavyweight of the group. He's got the most dubs under his belt. CJ, Chris Jefferson, how you doing, man?
It's good, man. I'm good to be back, man. I'm excited. Look, man, I like Steve's participation trophy. I like Eric's brand new microphone. I like RJ's, belt in the back. It looks like it needs a bit of polish. But no, it's going to be a good week. It's time to win this thing again, man. I've given these guys some chances to earn, but it's time to take the crown back once again this week. So let's do it.
There it is. All right. For everybody who's tuning in for the first time, potentially, this is the way the show works. We give each contestant 45 seconds to answer one question over the next 5 rounds. At the end, we will have an audience submitted question. So viewers, please make sure you're dropping your questions for us. We will pick one, and potentially we may pick 2, because last week we had a tiebreaker. So drop the questions in the chat. Get ready to vote, because that is how we select the winner after each question. And I believe we are ready for the game to begin. Gentlemen, you guys ready?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Let's do it.
Question number 1. What is a great book that you would recommend to all entrepreneurs to read right now? Let's go with Steve starting off.
So one of my favorite business books, I've been talking about it recently, is The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham. And basically he talks about all the stupid mistakes you're going to make in business. And his one question is, imagine what your business would look like today if you're able to undo 3 of your worst decisions, right? So The Road Less Stupid gives you a roadmap of what to expect in your business and your entrepreneurial journey. It's one of my favorite business books.
That the things in the bottom are wrong.
All right. Let's go over to CJ. Let's go second to you.
Yes, I'm going to kind of have a dark horse book probably. I'm not going to shout out a business book or anything like that. I'm going to go with 48 Laws of Power. Now, look, this is a book that's banned in prisons, all right? Why this book to me is so good when it comes to business, it gives you a realistic perspective of how just things work, how relationships work, how people work, how people can trigger you, how people can be triggered. And so maybe it's a book of manipulation, perhaps, but I think it's a book of understanding how things function, how things work, how to use it to your benefit to do what you want to do in life. And I'll say this last, 40 Laws of Power is a book that can be used for good or for evil. Make sure you use it for good.
Like that. All right, let's go over to RJ Bates.
So I'm going to go with quite possibly my favorite book of all time, Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. I think every entrepreneur needs to understand that if you're taking the jump to become the decision maker in everything that goes on in your business, you need to understand the power of what extreme ownership means. And specifically the chapter about there are no bad teams, just bad leaders. And for me, that was a changing point when I read this book. I had a ton of ego. I thought that I was the best in my business and I could make no mistakes. And when I read that chapter, it literally brought me to tears. So this book changed my life, and that's why I give it out to all of my students. And I believe every entrepreneur should read Extreme Ownership.
All right, and let's close it up with Eric Brewer.
I agree with each and every one of those books, but I'm trying to put this in the context of what I would read first if I was to start an entrepreneurial journey. And I would go with 5 dysfunctions of a team. I think eventually as an entrepreneur, we're going to have to quickly enlist the help of others and build people to help us advance in business. And 5 dysfunctions of a team talks about just the core principles of what it takes to operate within a group of people and be successful. And it talks about trust, healthy conflict, commitment, accountability, and how each of those lead to results. And too many people skip the first 2 steps and try and go right to accountability or results without trust and conflict and commitment. So I would say the 5 dysfunctions of a team. I've read it a few times, and that's where I would start.
I was gonna say, where was the buzzer on that one? Hey, CJ, I want to ask you 2 questions. First, did you notice that RJ said had as in past tense, that he had an ego? I don't know if you noticed that. Second thing, hey RJ, remind me again why you lost the first closest Olympics.
Because I didn't prove enough in the second round.
Oh, it wasn't because of Carlos.
No, it was because of me.
I'm glad your tune has changed after reading that book. I guess that was a really good book.
It was.
Shots fired.
Power of ownership, man. I think
that was a lot of ownership that I just took right there. Like, it's actually hurting my insides.
No. I think you had a terrible second day. So I'm with you on that. But I think that, I think all these books are great. I think all these books make sense. I think the most important lesson I think we're all saying is you need to read. My dad was a great guy. One thing he did for me is he locked me in a room an hour a day. Every day it made me read a book. When I got older, those are habits that I was able to carry. All these books are great. All these books are impactful. But if you don't read the 40 Laws of Power, if you know how to have conversations with people, if you know how to have the ability to get what you want and do things right the right way, I don't know how much success you're going to have with a lot of things.
When did you read the 48 Laws of Power in your entrepreneur journey?
In the beginning, man, I read it because business is war. Right. People who don't think business is war are mistaken. People are savages when it comes to business. People are not going to be right when it comes to business. People are going to approach you with ulterior motives. And if you don't have the ability to be able to see that, you'll very quickly be taken advantage of. And that's something that happens to people all the time. How many times are we looking at Facebook and we see somebody talking about being burned by somebody or running into a problem? I think that book really helps with those types of things.
Hey, CJ, apparently your sound is real bad, so you're just going to have to stop talking and people are going to have to stop voting for you.
I hear CJ just fine. I think that going back though, to Chris's point about, people taking advantage of you and so on, I think that goes back to, extreme ownership, right? Like, were you doing what you needed to do to protect yourself? Were you communicating effectively, right? Like, it's easy to blame someone else when things go south, but were you either presenting yourself as a person that was foolish and maybe, easily taken advantage of, or maybe making some presumptions and really poor communication, and you're expecting one thing when in reality, no one was on the same page, right? But yeah, I'm with all you guys, right? These are all great books.
Absolutely.
So the voting,
and I'll
sorry, go ahead, RJ.
I'll echo what CJ said. I mean, for me, one of the turning points was reading on a daily basis just about to improve myself. It sounds silly, but I didn't have enough time to sit down and actually read. So for me, I began listening to Audible books every morning when I was getting ready instead of listening to music. And I feel like that was a huge turning point for me just as a business owner and an entrepreneur.
There we go. CJ, would you just give me a quick mic check, and then Chad, if you could let me know if there's still an echo on CJ's mic. You can say anything. Like
Test.
And I'm going to give you kudos because somehow you're winning with an echo. Oh, actually, it's a tie right now, so we still got a couple seconds to vote.
Close the vote.
VAs are
Close
in.
the vote.
VAs are in.
But in all seriousness, I feel like this is one of the greatest values of this program because for me personally, reading is something I don't do enough of, right? So you guys are placing personal accountability on me. So tune in, everybody in the chat. Listen to what these guys are saying. They're very successful in this space. They know what they're talking about. Pick up a book. I am a little discouraged that I heard nobody say Bible or Quran or Book of Mormon, whatever your preference is, but nobody said that. Looks like the voting has closed at 46% to RJ Bates on the board with the first points of the day. RJ, how you feeling, man?
Oh man, I'm back in my winning ways.
There we go.
Great
There we
irony
go.
in that victory.
All right, you guys ready for question number 2?
Yeah, Weasel, do I still have an echo or are we good to go?
I don't see any comments about an echo, so I think we'll be good. I'll
Sounds
tell
good to
you
me.
what. Let's start with you for question number 2. Usually we go with the winner, but we're gonna go with you, CJ, first.
Echo.
What is the greatest way to incentivize your employees, in your opinion? CJ, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the greatest way to incentivize an employee is to actually believe in them. You know, I think a lot of times we think that people's only care is about money, but I think a lot of people's, care is about growth, it's about evolution, really finding out like what does an employee care about. I think it was Eric, I want to say, that actually made this comment that I really appreciated the other week, where one thing that he does is help his employees get the opportunity to be able to purchase rental property. He supports them in that. I believe that's what you have to do. If you really care about people and want to incentivize them, find out what their long-term goals are, find out how you can be supportive of that, and help them create a pathway as a leader that can get them to a road of accomplishment whatever it comes to, whether it's buying a rental, doing their first fix and flip, starting their own business that could be supplemental to whatever it is that you do. So that's what I would do as far as trying to incentivize an employee.
All right, perfectly spot on. 45 seconds. Let's go over to RJ Bates. Your opinion.
I think the best incentive for an employee is vision, right? I think you need to cast the vision as the business owner where you want to take the business, where they fall in line on accomplishing that vision, and then also communicating with your employees about what is their vision for their life and how can your company help them accomplish what they want to do with their lives. And so across the board, it's both as the owner of the business, we're casting the vision to them on where we're trying to go, but then how that fits in line with their life and being a part of our company.
All right. Steve Trang.
I think the best way to incentivize an employee is to value them. A lot of times we think it's money, right? But it's not. People will come for money, but they're going to stay when you value them. We have this idea of like, as the boss, I tell you what to do, kind of RJ's talking about like vision. Really, the employees that get input, that get to talk about the direction of the company, that get to say, hey, here's what I'm seeing on the front lines. Can you, what do you think about this? And they get to offer input. When people in your organization get to offer input as to the direction of the company, they are bought into the vision. They are bought into the company and they will feel valued. And that's, once they feel valued, they'll work way harder for you than you could ever pay them for.
All right. And let's close it out with Eric Brewer.
So a lot of really good answers there, all of which I tend to agree with. I'm going to give you something that I learned from a leadership coach of mine. I think Steve works with him, Larry Yatch, and he taught me something a few months ago. And he said, when you become vulnerable as a leader, you give your people the ability to help you, right? And helping people is like crack to other people. So if you want to incentivize your staff, actually creating the opportunity for them to be able to help by you being vulnerable as a leader, to Steve's point, when you say, hey man, I really need your help on this project. I have some ideas about how we should approach it, but you're the pro, you're on the front lines, you're talking to sellers and buyers every single day. I want you to look at this and tell me what I'm missing. I really need your help. It gives them some ownership. And then most importantly, it gives them the ability to help, which according to Larry Yatch, the dude's led Navy SEAL teams on some of the biggest military missions in U.S. history. That's how you incentivize people.
Okay. Yep. Voting is now open and the floor is open as well, gentlemen.
I'm assuming Eric's voting for me, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'm actually wouldn't think of it
in terms of,
but go ahead, Chris.
I think Steve made a really good point, and I want to just say something about it real quick. Because, and Eric as well, because Eric kind of echoed his point, being vulnerable, talking to your team about what you're going through, but just being available to get help from the people that you put in position to help you, I think is crazy, crazy important. But also, again, like I said, not making it just about you as a leader, also leaning into them. What goals do they have? I mean, you got people who work for you that are seeing you make large amounts of money and doing all these different types of things. Create the opportunity for them to be able to do those things as well.
So you agree with my answer, really, because I was the one that said you need to talk to them about what's their vision in their life and how we can help them accomplish that. I'll give an example. One of my employees, Josh, came up to me yesterday. He had this great idea about buying some vacant land. and what we could do with it. And from there, it became about let's cast a bigger vision and how that could be a part of what we do here at Titanium. I just think that's extremely important to just be open and listen to what your employees want to do with their life. I don't think that can incentivize any. I don't see another way that you can incentivize an employee better than that.
So it seems like you all agree with me, but somehow RJ is winning.
I'm going to give you some clarity on what RJ's saying because he's making a good point. But here's the problem. I think depending on your age, you may have got really, really bad advice somewhere in the beginning of business. I know I did. And I grew up in the car business. And I was told I should never develop any type of personal relationship with anybody that was a lower rank than me or I directly was, in charge of. And I've come to learn that that is probably the opposite of what you should be doing. There certainly needs to be boundaries, but people will go further and do more for someone and a business that they feel personally invested in. That also feels that we have some type of or quite a bit of personal interest in their well-being outside of them being an employee. So if you've heard that, recommendation before about keeping employees at arm's length with no personal relationship, it's just bad advice.
Yeah, that's what we learned in 20th century leadership, right? That's when we had the military complex. That's when when we would cry as kids and dad would come around and slap you like, what are you crying about, right? Like that worked in that day and age. But today, right, all of us are trying to build businesses that don't rely on us, right? You mentioned Larry H earlier. Our goal is to become irrelevant. Our goal is to create a company that does not rely on us. In order to develop a company that does not rely on us, we need to have people on the front lines that know what they're doing, are valued, and want to let you guys know at the top what's going on so that we can grow the business in the right direction. They're assisting us with the vision.
Really good book to read for that, Delivering Happiness. It's written by the founder of Zappos. They built their entire company around a culture that put their employees first, and everything else took off from there.
All right. It looks like the voting is still open, but getting ready to close right now.
Yeah, this is rigged.
Hey, listen, it's still open.
AKA, what just happened there was Weasel said we don't want RJ to win again, so we're going to go way past our 2 minutes to see if more people will vote for something.
I'm not in control of the voting, the opening and closing of the voting. I just deliver the results, okay? It looks like even with that, I'm going to give you some good news. That's 2 points on the board, or another point on the board for RJ. I'm sorry. So we're at 38% of the votes goes to RJ Bates. Congratulations, my friend. All right, let's get a little spicy. Now, I know you guys keep a little eye and ear to sports. So I want to ask your opinion on this one. Recently, there's been a lot of contracts going around where stipulations are placed in the contracts based on that individual. Kyler Murray with having to study, Zion Williamson with having to control the weight management. In your opinion, are conditional clauses in employee contracts a positive or a negative idea? Let's start with RJ Bates.
I'm going to say it's a negative because it's just showing a sign of weakness on your part as an organization and leadership. I mean, if you have to tell your quarterback to go watch film, they probably, quite frankly, don't believe in what you're doing as an organization, and they don't understand what you're trying to accomplish. So for me, if you have to write that into a contract, that's on you.
Yeah, I mean, I think something like that as a representative, I've got to put on a Supermax contract at his age, what it means to be a great player and create an opportunity for himself. So I don't see why you want to impose something like that on somebody that's just started with your organization or trying to grow within your organization. So, yeah, I think that's definitely a negative. I don't think that's something I'd want for somebody that's on my team, my organization. Leadership, your C-suite or your management level.
I got to disagree. I think all we're doing is just clearly stating expectations. I mean, effectively, you guys would say that you can hire people and staff and not tell them they need to show up for work on time or achieve a certain amount of contracts per month. I think you're full of shit because he was built like me 11 months ago. Okay. So the fact is that the guy didn't do it on his own. We can talk about leadership or whatever we want to talk about. I think it is leadership. 80% of the time when someone's not performing, it's because they either don't clearly understand the expectations or they don't have the resources and the training that they need to perform at the level that they're expected to. So I think listen, it's going the other way. Athletes have put a lot of clauses in their contracts about their ability and things they can do and freedoms they have. This is an example of just clearly communicating expectations. I think it's fair. If they sign the deal, it's all game.
Dropping the bombs, Eric Brewer. I like it. Let's close it up with Steve Trang.
So Eric, what was it number one for the 5 dysfunctional team? Was trust number one? So
Yeah.
So I think what we're doing here is we have a very clear mistrust with an organization. I think when we put in here like, hey, I need you to study 4 hours of game film a week, I would say there's massive mistrust with an organization. Actually, I'm fine with the weight clause. That was news to me. But the part where you need to do 4 hours of game film, I just think that just says like you're not my guy, right? I think that's all that says, and I think that it sets a, they might not like it, but I think it just we've got poor trust issues, and I think that's what you're going to communicate to your entire organization when you have to put 4 hours of game film study that you need to monitor. I don't even know how they're even going to track that, like having someone sit in his house to make sure he's watching game film, checking in and checking out. But I think that people are mistaken performance clauses with these conditional clauses. I love performance clauses, right? If you can hit X, Y, and Z, man, I want to pay you more. I love those. But conditional clauses where like, hey, if you can't do game film, we're gonna dock your pay. I think that just sends the wrong message.
I don't think anyone has ever been more wrong about a question on this show than Eric is right now. I mean, you are so wrong.
I can appreciate where he's coming from.
Listen,
so
you are saying
two
that
multi-billion-dollar organizations. You've basically those people that own. First of all, they were billionaires before they bought the sports teams. They run massive organizations, right? They got 300 people all moving in the same direction, and you got it figured out, and they don't. Is what you're saying.
Clearly, the Pelicans don't have it written in that everyone has to come in some kind of game shape. They have to specifically write it in Zion's contract that you can't show up looking like Eric Brewer and be an NBA All-Star. Okay? I mean, this is asinine. You have to tell your quarterback to watch film? No, that's just supposed to be part of mandatory participation.
20 years old. You forget.
What is
they're
that?
20, 22 years old. Like, honestly,
the age has nothing to do with it. I'm going to completely disagree with this. That's just supposed to be a part of
why you're right and they're wrong.
I'll tell the Pelicans and the Cardinals, this is why you've never won a championship right here, in case you were wondering.
I think it is interesting, though. I don't think this would be the conditional clause would be as much of an issue if we didn't have guaranteed contracts, right? I think that's one of the problems, and I think that kind of goes back to Eric's point, is like the players' contracts are in those sports tend to be more player friendly, so it's not as bad as baseball, but I think that's part of the reason why is that the supermax contracts.
I mean, I just the fact that you have to tell your quarterback that he has to watch game film in his contract, and it's not just a part of the culture of your team. Kyler Murray would never play a down for Bill Belichick if that was the case. And that just goes back to leadership and culture within the company.
Okay. All right. Spicy arguments all around.
They're establishing standards like culture.
I knew something was wrong when CJ got 50% of the votes.
Spoke that round.
He didn't.
I thought they skipped over you. I didn't even remember you going.